we often, imagine that Trump will simply be bad for the Ukrainians, good for Russia. But could a Trump economy, led global economy, in fact, be damaging for Putin? I think you've previously mentioned yourself on Frontline that Trump's desire to increase US oil production could drop the price of oil, which could harm the Russian economy. Is there anything that Putin's going to be looking out for under a Trump economy, that a Trump administration that could be damaging for the Kremlin?
Well, I mean, the irony perhaps is that a peace deal that eased sanctions on Russia, combined with Trump's agenda clearly to pump more oil and deregulate, it could crash global oil prices again, as you've mentioned, which would be pretty catastrophic for the Russian economy. Something like 40% of export receipts and government receipts are oil and energy related, right? So that would be pretty devastating on Putin. I mean, Trump has lots of leverage over Putin, right? He has lots of levers he can pull. He has the ability to dial up military support for Ukraine. He could provide them with more weapons. Remember, no US troops are on the line in Ukraine. There are no boots on the ground. No Americans are dying in Ukraine defending Western security and European security. And actually, in many respects, the more weapons that Trump supplies to Ukraine, a lot of that is really good for the US military industrial complex and for the US economy. Trump has the ability to massively increase sanctions if he wants to. And remember here, we started off talking about the Russian economy, and I still don't think a long war necessarily is good for Putin. It comes with risks, right? So I think you have a situation where Putin would rather like a settlement at this point in time, or at least a break in the war, a ceasefire, either a deal that gives him everything he wants, or a deal that leaves Ukraine insecure and gives him the option to intervene again in the future. But I think Putin wants a peace deal more than Trump. I'm not sure Trump really recognizes that, and I'm not sure Trump really understands that he has all the cards over Putin. I mean, it was a bit worrying this week that what we've seen is Trump concede already some of those ace cards he had. What should be up for negotiation is whether or not Ukraine joins NATO. Ukraine wants to join NATO. Russia doesn't want it to join. But already Trump declared this week there is no NATO membership for Ukraine. I mean, that's an incredible give from Trump before negotiations even began. Also, he mentioned no long-range missiles for Ukraine. Ukraine's been put at a huge disadvantage in recent years by the fact that the Biden administration and Scholz in Germany have basically red-carded the use of long-range Western weapons into Russia. Russia is using long-range weapons against Ukraine to a devastating effect. The fact that Ukraine couldn't hit back has left them very, very vulnerable. It's meant that they've not been able to hit Russian supply chains. Russia has moved them further back to put beyond reach of Ukrainian long-range weapons. But Trump has said he's not going to do that. So again, it's one of his ace, NATO membership, use of long-range weapons. He's already pulled that off the agenda. I mean, this doesn't look like a person who really understands the issues and problems in Ukraine. It doesn't seem like he really understands what a strong negotiating position he is in and what a weak position Putin is in. And I think the Ukrainians must be quite fearful that in the end, Trump is going to give Putin everything he wants. In fact, interestingly, also in terms of what's already been conceded, General Kellogg, who's been anointed as Trump's chief negotiator for Ukraine, already wrote a piece over the summer suggesting that Russia gets what it de facto controls in terms of territory on the ground. Again, this was something that could have been negotiated. So Trump and his colleagues are rapidly giving away most of their negotiating points, which again leaves Ukraine rather vulnerable.
Is there something more that Europe could do then in terms of, as some people have called it, Trump-proofing Ukraine? One thing this week on Monday, UK members of Parliament debated whether the UK should hand over $300 billion of frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. That's obviously a long-running debate. Are we likely to see any further movement in that direction?
Well, there's been a long, painful discussion on that issues since the invasion, actually. In the $330 billion of Central Bank of Russia assets, that's Russian taxpayers' money, was immobilized in Western jurisdictions within months of the full-scale invasion. So the last 2 years, we've been debating, whether or not that money should be given to Ukraine for recovery and reconstruction to fund its own defense. We've seen a lot of blocking tactics by vested interests, particularly in Europe, by the ECB, by the German government, Italian government, and the Belgian government. They seem to prefer a scenario where their own taxpayers pay for Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction and also are used to pay for Ukraine's defense. I think that's indefensible. We should be making Russia pay. We should be taking that money, giving it to the Ukrainians so they have a war chest that they can actually buy their own weapons to defend themselves. And imagine a scenario, I think it would be very difficult for President Trump, who wants to make America great again and is very focused on American jobs and spurring, the recovery and of the US economy. I mean, imagine if President Zelensky had $330 billion of cash sat in his bank account and he knocked on Trump's door and said, I'd rather like to buy 100 F-16s or 50 F-35s or whatever you have to offer. I don't think Trump could say no in that scenario. So I think it's a disgrace, actually, that our politicians have not done this already. It's easy to do legally. It's a political decision. And, those UK politicians or parliamentarians who are pushing this, I commend them. And the UK government needs to get behind it. One of the problems is, of the $330 billion, 2/3 is in the EU jurisdictions. So we have relatively small amounts in the UK. It's about $20 billion or something like that. Well, $20 billion around that amount. It would be good if the UK government unilaterally did that, but far better if we did it with our allies. And again, I mean, it would Trump-proof Ukraine's financing its defences. Unfortunately, it's probably a bit too late in that regard. We're like a week and a half or so away from a Trump administration. We're not sure what the Trump administration's views on it are. But as I said, it's a shame that it hasn't happened already and Ukraine's not got those resources so it could buy its own defence equipment.
So from the position that Putin and the Kremlin are in now, do you think Putin is going to be feeling pretty confident at this point in his aims and objectives and where Russia is economically at the moment?
Well, again, a lot depends on this actual negotiation. Does Putin think he can get one over on Trump? Does Putin? I mean, clear Putin cares about Ukraine more than Trump. Does Trump really understand all the issues? I don't think so. Does he care enough about Europe? Does he understand Ukraine is central for European security? Not really. Putin must feel fairly confident going into negotiations that he can pull one over on Trump. I guess the only modicum of ease, perhaps for the Ukrainians, is that Trump, sells this line that is a genius negotiator, right? Is the art of the deal. As I said, Trump has all the cards. If he screws up this negotiation and the end result is a collapse of Ukraine akin to what happened in Afghanistan, the implications for Europe will be devastating, and that will be all on Trump's watch. Trump would get all the negative commentary around this. How the hell could this guy screw up these negotiations when he had all the cards in his hands? When, as I said, Putin, I think, wants a deal, but he's seeing a scenario where he can get everything he wants, right? And it's difficult. There's a scenario where Ukraine could totally be sold down the river here.
Timothy Ash, thank you very much for joining Frontline today.
My pleasure.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio with me, Louis Sykes. If you'd like to be the first to get exclusive content, you can sign up for membership with the link below. You can also listen to Times Radio for the latest news and analysis, or read it on thetimes.com. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.